Yeah, and I guess if you want to kind of think about this in SaaS, there's a really good book called Behind the Cloud. It's written by Benioff, which is Salesforce's founder, and it kind of talks about like their whole story. And so, like SaaS has definitely gone through this exact kind of trajectory. So, phase one was Benioff had to even convince people that SaaS was a legitimate business model, that you shouldn't be buying software licenses anymore, where you actually have to like install it onto your computers or whatever. So he had to do that hard work. I'm glad that we don't. And then after that, like all you had to do was say you had a solution, and that was enough to convince a technical buyer, because there obviously like wasn't any choice at that time. If someone had X problem and you had a SaaS that solved that problem, there's a chance that you were like the only one that was solving that problem for a little while anyways. And then obviously, like always happens in markets, if people are successful, more people come into the market. And then you're having to do better than just say we have a solution in a way that a technical buyer can understand. You have to do so in such a way that like a non-technical buyer or an end user can understand. So this could be like the salesperson who's having some problem in their daily workflow and they're looking for a solution. You can't just say we have a solution. You have to make sure like they can understand it as someone who doesn't actually create software. And then I think what happens is, again, more people pile in, more people catch on to the idea that you need to be able to sell to the non-technical buyer, the end user. And that's where I think we kind of are today. And I think we're in a transitionary period. And this is like the voice of customer era, where, it's not enough to be clear and concise in your messaging. You also have to communicate in such a way that resonates with your ideal customer. So their pains and struggles, their desired outcomes, what they might have experienced before using you or comparing you to current solutions. Doing so in such a way that's like it's in their words and it resonates, and it doesn't just feel like marketing dribble. And I feel like like you said, categories are all becoming far more congested with very similar solutions, and a lot of people are starting to catch on to this whole voice of customer idea as well. So I think, like you said, eventually once people catch on to something, you have to do something new. Otherwise, you're just going to kind of disappear into the mess of everyone looking the same. And I think that's where we are today. And this is where I think we need to do more comparisons. So why us and not them? And I think a part of that is definitely focusing. So, right now I'm working with a company called Sked Social, and they're in the very crowded space of like social scheduling tools, Buffer, Hootsuite. These are massive companies with tons of funding. And so the way they differentiate is, yes, they have to match them on certain pieces, but they are doing like what you said, splintering the market and going very deep on Instagram. They went deep on Instagram before it was even cool. And so they're always the first to launch new Instagram features. They have capabilities that even Hootsuite hasn't copied yet. And even when all those features are copied, just because Sked Social was built with Instagram in mind first, it's a very visual platform. And that's going to be something that's very difficult for like a Hootsuite to rebuild their entire platform with Instagram in mind. So they've kind of done that, like a why us and not them, using Instagram as their method of kind of splintering the market. And then the other idea there is moonshot messaging. And this, I guess you could say, is like risky messaging. It captures the essence of what customers are saying and thinking, but you communicate it in a way that isn't in like their exact words like we would have done in the past, but you take a risk and you say it in a way that's a little jarring and perhaps more memorable. You obviously are sacrificing some clarity when you do this,
Yep.
but I think that's a risk we might have to be willing to take when, there's 20 tools that do something very similar. We're all saying the same things. You might have to roll the dice once in a while and say something a little bit shocking and see if it sticks.